Family law is about people, not paperwork. Trusted by thousands of UK firms, Leap's legal software gives family lawyers a single, fully integrated platform to scale your practice, stay compliant, and deliver better client outcomes. Learn more at leap.co.uk.
You're listening to the Today's Family Lawyer podcast, the leading source of daily news and insight for family law practitioners in England and Wales. Sign up to our free weekly newsletter at todaysfamilylawyer.co.uk and subscribe to hear all the latest news and views from across the family law sector. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Hello, welcome along to the latest Today's Family Lawyer podcast. Today I welcome on James Evans to the podcast to talk about a new directory that has been launched by a charity identifying the range of separated parenting programs that exist in and around England and Wales. First of its kind. There's lots of these parenting programs knocking about. First time that they've all been brought under one roof though, James.
That's it, David, and thank you so much for having me on, and a pleasure to be here. That's exactly right, really. I think one of the issues that we identified was that there was this sort of long-standing gap in the system, that there were parenting programs available, and these are hugely effective programs, but there was not enough knowledge about them, but crucially not enough sort of direction towards them. So that was what we were trying to achieve with the charity. We wanted quality assurance with these programs and making sure that they were designed specifically for separating families. So that's why we as a collective came together to build the Separated Parenting Program Directory.
Smashing. Well, you've done a much better introduction to it than me. Before we launch into all of that, tell us about yourself. You've been on the podcast before when you were in a previous role. You're now at Nova Law, Head of Strategic Growth. Tell us about yourself and your role, James, there, and then how you got involved in this effort to create greater awareness of these programs.
Sure. So my personal experience and background originally actually came from education. I was a primary school teacher before I joined the family law world, working with children, of course, and families, and that was how I sort of segued into this industry, seeing the direct effect of negative impacts of separation and divorce amongst families and how that affected the children that I was teaching. And that was enough for me really to want to try and see some change in the system. So I joined the family law world with a focus on legal technology. That was sort of where my expertise landed, and indeed I've joined this year the Nova platform as the head of strategic growth. It's a really exciting time to be at Nova, and we've developed some really innovative tools to help families going through that process. It uses artificial intelligence, which I suppose is a whole other podcast, David, that we could talk about, but it uses really innovative technology to help both practitioners and family members in that family law space. So I'm really proud to be at Nova. But about 2-3 years ago, I was at a dinner. I think it was a family mediators dinner, sat next to Helen Adam, and Helen and I were chatting about some of the parent programs that she was aware of, and indeed some of the parent programs that I'd seen in my time in family law, and knew that they were effective and really, really helpful, but noticing that there wasn't enough awareness of them, there wasn't enough use of them, and we needed to do something about that urgently to try and improve that situation. So that's when I sort of joined the working group for the Separated Parenting Program Directory, due to the sort of guidance and leadership from Helen there. And fast forward to where we are now, we've come together as a really exciting group with really, really innovative people who've come together to build the program, to build the platform, and build the standards and accreditation that is really important to the work we're doing as well. So I think as a collective, that was what we've come together to do, and that's how we find ourselves here today.
So the directory sort of formally launched quite recently, didn't it?
Yes, yeah, just a few months ago.
And it's aimed at both parents but also professionals. So it's a resource both for parents to be able to go to and say, okay, this is the sort of thing that I want to do, but also professionals to say, these are the sorts of resources in my locality. I mean, are these programs still quite location based?
there's options, which is, I think, is really helpful, and you're right that the parents could find this of themselves, and ideally, down the line, once this is getting more and more use, parents will find this of their own volition, and they will have opportunities to figure out what is a parenting program first of all, and then which parenting program is right for me. And you're right, David, similarly, practitioners in this space, anyone working with divorced or separated parents, can point their clients and point the families that they're working with towards the directory and recognize and say, look, it's going to be really, really helpful for these families to do one of these programs, but how do they know which one is right for them? And that's where the directory comes in. So there's some really excellent filters when they're searching through to say, look, this is my region, or this is the type or style of program that I'm interested in. Maybe I'd prefer it online. This is the type of cost I'm looking at. The directory will give them loads of opportunities to explore the different programs that are on the directory and figure out which one is right for them. And it's crucial that both the parents and the practitioners know that they are getting quality assured programs, and that's some of the exceptional work that other members of the board of trustees have pulled together to make sure that there's standards that are adhered to by the programs on the directory, and therefore we're sort of, in that sense, making sure that they've got that stamp of, we can trust them, we can rely on them, we know that they are really, really effective. So much so that we even have members on our group who run parenting programs and themselves, and they are some of the most excellent programs you will see, and we know that they have such huge efficacy in improving outcomes for separated families. So encouraging families to do these programs is so vital for the family law community, and making sure that they're doing the right one for them is what hopefully the directory will help with.
You talk about quality assurance. I mean, that feels like a really, really important element of this, because it's a wholly unregulated space. Anybody presumably can set up as a parenting apart program of some description. How have you come about creating standards and guidance for these organizations? What does that look like, and how can, I guess there's sort of quite a number of questions rolled into one here, but how can professionals be reassured that that was a very thorough process as well?
I won't be able to take any personal credit for that aspect of the work, I'm afraid, David, but I am very, very privileged to have worked alongside some of the most formative names in this industry who have developed those standards. And these are people who have really impressive experience with this type of work. So we're looking at Helen Adam from Wales Mediation, Elizabeth Coe from the National Association of Children Contact Centres, and Beverly Sayers from Mediation Northwest, Marcy Shaw from the Co-Parent Way, Adele Ballantyne from Aleda Consultancy, and Denise Ingamells, who wrote the original SPIP years ago. So these are the right people, David, who are the most, and it's been an absolute privilege to work alongside them and see them collaborate to develop these standards. And the parent programs that are on there, the ones that have been running their programs for a long time and are very well established nationally, they're adhering to these standards already. We've not reinvented the wheel. It's making sure that they are, anything new or anything coming in is ticking those boxes. And I suppose you're right, David. It's hard to quantify what it looks like by, if you go on social media channels and see that there's someone who says, this is how much I charge and I'll give you advice and it's a program, and it's hard to know. And there are going to be lots of really good examples of that, but there are also going to be some where they haven't got the right experience, or maybe they aren't meeting those standards. And we just want to make sure that both practitioners and parents know that there's a reliable source for that. So again, my answer is I can't take any personal credit for that aspect of it, but the people involved are absolutely the right people.
I think you probably covered this in the course of the discussion so far, James, but why does it feel like now is the right time to be launching this directory?
I mean, if you look at the journey that's happened with mediation as an example over the last sort of 20 years, to see where it was then as it being sort of a conversational piece and not too popular, to now where it is one of the most popular forms of dispute resolution, so much so that there's a government voucher to encourage parents to try mediation. We as a community are seeing so much improvement by keeping parents out of court. And I think we as a group think the next evolution in that looks like parenting programs. There is so much success and value in doing the parenting programs of either keeping parents out of court entirely or resolving their issues without having to litigate. That will cause them to improve their journey. They're not going to spend as much money possibly. They're not going to have such a difficult emotional strain potentially by doing this type of work. So I think if you look at the landscape of family law in general and where we are with, non-court dispute resolution, keeping parents out of court where we can, where appropriate, I think that these parenting programs are going to make a huge difference. And as we've seen with a lot of NCDR, the earlier the better. The sooner that we can intervene in this capacity, the more productive it's going to be from those families. And I'm sure those that run the programs will have evidence to show that, the difference that it makes by having parents do these programs online or in person earlier makes a huge difference to the outcome of their resolution.
Is there enough awareness amongst practitioners of these programs?
Probably not, although I think now with the launch of our directory, we're optimistic that, you and I can have a conversation this time next year, David, and it'll be much more commonplace, and maybe even, optimistically the judiciary can have the opportunity to say to parents, there's a directory, go and have a look, go and explore what's appropriate for you. So I think the answer is no, there's not enough awareness of which programs there are now, but, the first domino has been pushed in the hope that awareness will come to the wider space very soon.
And with that in mind, can you just recap for people that perhaps aren't particularly familiar with it, things like how these programs work, how they're funded, who funds them, how professionals point clients in the direction of what's available to them?
Sure. And I think it's worth noting that each course is different and each program has its own nuances and approach. And I think that's what makes them really effective. But they're structured courses and they're sort of maybe interventions of some type to help parents navigate separation in a healthier way. So they're not necessarily about telling parents how to be a parent, but they're more about giving practical tools on communication or reducing conflict or supporting children or how to build workable relationships. It's usually very child focused and future focused and helping parents move forward. And again, that's why the earlier the better. And there are some superb programs and people on the board who run those programs who can give you a really good feel. And again, for those listening who want to find out more, the best way really is to go onto the directory website, Separated Parenting Program directory.org, and you'll be able to get a really good feel for what the different types of programs are and how they work. But for some, it might be, durational. It might be a few weeks online. For some, it might be in person. It might be over an extended period, or it might be a shorter intensive period. It just depends what type of program is right for that individual or that couple, and choosing from our directory what's best. And then I suppose it will be, to answer the second part of your question, I suppose it's the responsibility now of the practitioners in our space to be aware of this so that they can give an option to their clients or the families they're working with and recognize and say, look, you've come to us at this stage of your journey and here are some issues that need resolving. Actually, on reflection, what's going to be one of the most effective ways of resolving this early is doing one of these courses, seeing which one is right for you, exploring the different options on the directory, finding out what they are and giving it a go. And I truly wouldn't be here or wouldn't have joined this group if it wasn't the belief that they will make a huge difference.
There are certainly examples where families will have to fund it themselves, aren't there?
Indeed, yeah, it's a case by case basis, I think, is the answer to that. And some of the programs will have all their prices listed on the directory as well, so you know what you're getting into at the start. And there are lots of different options, and indeed lots of different program providers have different pricing options for their different scenarios as well. So that's what the directory does a really good job of. It gives them the opportunity to explore different options based on their needs.
There's an elephant in the room here, I think, which is, and certainly on today's Family Lawyer, we've written about this recently. Court delays continue to cause huge issues for family professionals.
We do.
And this is, I guess if you want to take a controversial view, this is just a sticking plaster for some of the challenges that we face in the judiciary.
I understand where you're coming from. However, I think what I would say is that the research has shown, and I've seen this, in action from some of my colleagues on the board, that the earlier they start doing programs like this, it actually reduces the likelihood that they need to go to court. If they can resolve these issues early, and perhaps avoid going through that process of litigation, it will encourage them or indeed resolve some of those issues, meaning they won't need to go to court. So that backlog is there. You're absolutely right, and there is a huge demand on the industry and trying to negotiate and navigate the different methods of dispute resolution and non-court dispute resolution. But I think the efficacy of these programs is so much so that if parents have the opportunity to learn about them early, do the programs at a stage where it can make an impact and a difference, they might be able to reduce that conflict in such a substantial way that they don't need to go to court. And I'm sure that the parent program providers have that outcome in mind, trying to improve the outcome for the family, and the outcome for the family looks like not going to court.
I mean, you made the point earlier about the fact that if the judiciary get hold of this as well, it could be quite powerful, couldn't it? Because, of course, we've seen family procedure rule updates about making out-of-court resolution a more important part of that process. This feels like another step on that journey, doesn't it?
I believe so. And there are now more and more judiciary that we're hearing of that are saying to the parents that they see in front of them, have you tried a method of non-court dispute resolution? And if they haven't, we hear accounts that some judiciary will go as far as saying, right, off you go and come back another day after you've tried some. So if judiciary and other governing bodies are aware that there is a directory of standardized parenting programs that they can rely on, then it's a really good way of signposting and saying early on, look, actually based on your scenario, most of your issues we think optimistically can be resolved by one of these excellent parent programs. Head to the directory, find out which one's best for you, and go from there.
You talked about this being a 2 to 3 year journey to date, and I guess at the risk of being a little bit flippant, it sounds as though you've kind of delivered on what you set out to do. You've delivered the directory. There are these standards and accreditations that you've talked about. So perhaps the question is, what's next for the charity and for what you're trying to achieve, James?
Well, I think it's worth noting that so much work has gone into getting it to this point, and that's a lot of voluntary time and effort from so many amazing individuals. And indeed, the website is launched now, the directory is available, and that's a huge milestone for us. But really, our work is only just getting started. The next stage really is twofold. One, it's awareness, and we've talked about that already, but spreading the word is vital. Making sure that parents and practitioners are aware that this directory is available is going to be really helpful. We really want, now that the directory is live, we really want people using it. We really want to see that they are having the opportunity to explore their needs and finding a program for them and going through that. And the other part is, as with all charities, the only way really we're going to be able to continue to grow and develop is through funding, and that's always going to be really helpful. So if there is a chambers or a firm or anyone that's listening and thinks, gosh, it would, we're looking for our next charity partner or whatever it might be, please do think of us, because the next stages for us are making sure that all programs are on the directory. And we have a really good roster on there so far, but there are going to be more out there that we need to make sure have the opportunity to showcase their work. So if you're listening to this and you have your own parenting program of some capacity, brilliant, that's great news. Please do go on the website and you can upload yourself there and run it through our team. It'd be really good to continue to fill out the directory with more and more programs so that people are more aware of what's available. And you mentioned earlier, David, about the regionality of this, and it might be the case that you might have a directory and it's really local, but there isn't a way of spreading the word about that. That's hopefully what we're going to achieve. So growth for us, I think, looks like making sure that all programs are registered and listed in the directory and have gone through the standards, and then making sure that we have the capacity to spread the word in the best way possible, and making sure that more and more people are aware of that. And that will come through the energy of the right people, and finances will always support that as well. We're giving us capacity to attend events and speak at conferences and go to judicial or government bodies to be able to spread the word. So that's what the growth looks like for us. I think you're right that it's a really great milestone to have the directory live, but we've got a lot more work we want to achieve.
Well, I wish you all the very best with it, and of course people can get in touch through the website as well. James, you've read that out, so thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate you joining the podcast, raising awareness. Hopefully this podcast helps raise awareness of the directory as well, and thank you so much for your time, James.
No, thank you, David. An absolute pleasure, and very grateful indeed to have the opportunity.
The Today's Family Lawyer podcast is available on your preferred podcast provider. It's also available on todaysfamilylawyer.co.uk. My thanks to James. Thank you as ever for listening, and we'll see you again soon.